went from in the red to 2023 closing over 100 million in GCI, higher than I ever had before, all while having a baby, taking 5 months off.
Welcome, everyone, to the Closing Table Podcast, real accounts from real estate professionals brought to you by Windowsill. I'm your host, Kat Schooler, and today I'm sitting down with real estate agent, speaker, and coach Kaila Lindsey. Kaila is raising the bar in real estate out there in Charlotte, North Carolina. She is an eXp Icon agent 5 times over, in the top 1% of realtors in the United States, the CEO of the Trulane Group real estate team. She's created a multiple six-figure business and is the author of the Viral Agent Formula. Today, Kaila shares with us how she was able to take 5 months off in real estate, stop working nights and weekends, and still be doing the most business she's ever done, all by cloning herself and leveraging her time through the creation of a YouTube channel. Kaila shares with us how she walks people through this with her viral agent formula. She shares some of her favorite automations and the way she handles her time so that she can achieve all of this amazing business. And stick around to the end. Kaila shares a special code just for our listeners if you're interested in working with her. So without further ado, let's talk to Kaila. Kaila, thank you so much for joining me today. You have had an amazing career, and you've kind of overhauled it in a major way in the last 2 years. Can you kind of take us through the beginning of your real estate journey up until when you kind of turned it on its head and what you've changed?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's such a great question. So I came into the industry like many of us I do, no money to spend, couldn't do advertising, couldn't pay for leads. And I basically buckled down and hustled. So I learned how to cold call, I learned scripting, and literally every day I've got agents that I coach now or do live trainings. They're like, I was there, I was next to her, I would hear her call every single day, and I would cold call every day from 9 until noon every single day. And it was something that I enjoyed, which I know some of you are like, she's crazy. But I enjoyed it
Mhm.
because I knew my outcome, right? I could say if I made this many calls, I did this many things, this is what I was going to get, which is X number of listings. So I could truly build out my business. But what ended up happening was over time, and some of you might have already been through this or in this or leading to this right now, is I got really burnt out, like really burnt out. And before you know it, it was like I was showing up, but I didn't want to do the activity because I really didn't want to sit in somebody's living room and convince them that I was the best agent of the 5 that they interviewed that day, right? So, right around that time, I started building out my team, and because that's what we're told to do, right? The next best step is you go ahead and build out your team and you get them the leads, and then I was spending more money. And before you knew it, I was in 2022. As many of you know, the market shifted hard in that year, and I was left holding the bag, right? I had a bunch of expenses. I had no agents on my team because they went because there was no closings happening, regardless of the number of leads coming in. And I was in the red. Now, adding on to that, because I hadn't cold called in about a year because I was building and growing a team and passing off leads. But on top of that, I also became pregnant, which it was planned. It happened a lot sooner than anticipated. And they always say there's never a good time. Well, there's also still a better, more opportune time to get pregnant. I will say that. This was not one of them. So it was one of those moments I think most of us have had this in our lives where we have to make that decision that it's literally a something's got to give, right? Like something has to change. And I remember calling my coach at the time, and I am not a crier at all. Anybody that knows me knows I'm not. And I just started crying. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do, right? Like, I don't want to start cold calling again. It burnt me out. I want to be home for my family, but I still want to provide for them too. And a lot of my coaching students are in that same boat. They want the best of both worlds, but what we're taught is you either have to hustle hard or pay a lot of money, right? Like you either trade time for a dollar or money for more money. And I'd been down both roads because in between there, I'd invested in some leads and they weren't really panning out very well. And she said, you've been doing video, but you need to really invest in YouTube. So I said, okay. And it was an idea that had not been presented to me before. It seemed like it could work out. So I read the books, I listened to the podcasts, I stalked people online that were doing it really well. I even hired a coach to help me figure out those last little pieces that I was missing on my channel to make it happen. And literally went from in the red to 2023 closing over 100 million in GCI, higher than I ever had before, all while having a baby, taking 5 months off, which was amazing. I didn't work nights and weekends. And literally it worked, right? It was one of these things where I finally felt that weight fall off my shoulders because every other day I was getting a phone call from someone moving to the area. And the coolest part about it was they found me from my YouTube channel. I didn't pay for ads. I didn't have to show up like Instagram and those kinds of platforms where you have to show up multiple times a day. It was literally one video a week. That's it. That's all I was doing. One video a week that was getting posted. So I basically, in essence, cloned myself, which was really cool. I'm sure many of us have tried to do that. I tried to do that. I tried cold callers, I've tried all kinds of things, but no one could show up like I was. But by cloning myself on YouTube, they were watching me, they were understanding me. I was giving them a ton of information. By the time they called, they were like, "Where do I sign?" Like literally, they'll go, "Oh my gosh, you're real. I'm so excited. We can't wait to buy a house with you." Like that's the kind of response I got versus "Hey, I've got 60 seconds. Let me convince you to use me." They already knew it. And some of the science behind that, which is really interesting. I didn't know this prior to a few months ago, but people, so our brains, which we all know, right? Our brains don't know what's real or not. When someone watches 6 videos of someone else, they actually, in our brains, they liken it to having one in-person meeting. So if I've got people binge watching my content, before you know it, they feel like they've met me multiple times, and it could be the first time we're ever talking when they call me that first time. It's been an absolute game changer in my business and in my life. And for me, having the life shift is almost more important than the business shift for me because I can be present, which has been awesome.
That is so interesting about the 6 interactions, because I've heard it said about, the scientists, I think, call it parasocial relationships, right? That
Yes.
like if you listen to a podcast or whatever, like every day or whatever, that person or people become a part of like your parasocial relationships, like your brain considers them like friends, like them.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting to that number is 6 videos. Like that's not a lot.
No, no. And here's one thing to remember too. So it's 6, what we consider long form. So
Mm-hmm.
TikToks and Reels and things like that, those are considered short form content. It doesn't have as much of a, like you're talking about psychologically, as much of an attachment there. But if you take someone on a journey on 6, 15 to 20-minute videos, they're like, "We know this person." I get that all the time. They'll get on the phone, maybe like, or they see me on a video and they go, "Oh my gosh," because we do Zoom. Like, "Oh my gosh, I feel like I know you." And they start rattling off stories that I'd told about me living in New York or how long I'd been in Charlotte or all of these things and videos that I'd even forgotten I'd made, right? I was like, "When did I mention that?" Oh, that was like a year ago. Oh, you're watching content from a year ago. So the other impact in that is every video I make compounds. So I haven't done the math in probably about 4 or 5 months, honestly, but the last time I did the math on it, I make about $5,000 for every video I post. So that's not YouTube paying me, although I do have monetization now. That's the number of closings I have and how much I've made in GCI. Basically, it's the GCI portion of that divided by how many videos I've made. So it's really interesting to see the correlation at this point, though, because okay, not only can I now correlate like I used to with cold calling, of if I make this many calls, I get this many deals. Now I've been doing it for 2 years and it's okay, so now that I've done this, now I'm gonna make $5,000 with every video I post because I can go ahead and do the math on that. It's absolutely incredible, and of course, it makes my brain go, "Ooh, I should do more."
Totally. So for maybe a real estate agent who's like listening, they're like, okay, I get it. Like YouTube is the way. What is, I guess, in getting kind of the nitty gritty of the numbers of the ROI,
Yep.
how long does it take you to do a video? Like, how much are you investing in your production costs? Like, what are the details of that?
So glad you asked that. So a lot of my students, I have a course called the Viral Agent Formula, and a lot of my students, that's one of the biggest questions they ask because you do have these other platforms like Instagram and TikTok and things like that. The biggest savings for me is time, right? So if we're going to talk ROI, the time savings for me takes precedence. And I did look into this, if I were to do it on Instagram, I knew I had to make a reel a day, which takes about 30 minutes. And you're probably going, why 30 minutes? It's like it's a 3 second reel. The reason it's about 30 minutes is you've got stories throughout the day, first off. Second off, when you make a reel, you have to ensure that you've got correct copy in there. So you've got to make sure you're using keywords. You've got to make sure you've got the trending audio up. You've got to go ahead and do the quick editing. Don't get me wrong, but all those together, it's 30 minutes a day. All right. Minimum. And then interacting with your ideal client. Now, the reason, one of the many that I went to YouTube, the time commitment is literally about an hour to 2 hours a week. And I say an hour to 2 hours, depends upon how much you want to film that week. And it depends upon the type of filming you're doing. So I do three varieties, a little bit more than that, but the three main varieties of video I do: vlog tour, which takes about 2 hours for me to drive around that particular area and talk all about it. And then my editor splices it together, and we'll get that in a minute. Then there's talking head, which is literally me in front of the camera talking about particular content. And then I do videos of maps. I know that sounds boring, but what it is me sitting there and I'm showing people on the map what to expect in an area I'm discussing. So if I'm talking about, Matthews or Mint Hill, which are towns in our area, I'm going to say, okay, well, right here, and I'll circle it, you can see XYZ, and I explain it to them. So if you're coming from across the country, like I've done this, I'm sure you've done this, you travel across the country to go visit even on vacation, and Main Street looks the same as Trade Street, which looks the same as 7th Street, you have no idea what you're looking at until someone explains it. So those simplified videos of me just talking to a camera, those I can do in 30 minutes. And 30 minutes means about a 20-minute video. Okay. The vlog tours, they take about 2 hours. So that's where I give the variation. If I go ahead and do a talking head and a map tour, I can do two of them in a week, which is great. So I can start to kind of stock up on videos in the back end. Now, the second piece of investment, aside from time, is going to be, which I got to go back to time for a second here first. I hope you don't mind.
Oh,
So
go
the other
for it.
part of this is I can schedule everything. So unlike some other social media platforms where you've got to be live that day, if you have to post that day and it's gone in 24 hours, which most of it is short form, so it's gone in about 24 to 48 hours. With this, it lives on literally forever. People are still finding me from videos I made a year and a half ago, right? So it's still there. Second off, I can schedule it out. So when I was out for maternity leave for about 6 weeks, I pre-scheduled 6 videos to launch while I was out. I never had to look at my YouTube channel, but while I'm laying in bed with my little one, I'm getting phone calls of people who want to buy a house. People want to list, right? So that's the cool thing there. So from a time perspective, I don't have to keep reinventing and putting new things out there. It keeps selling for me and compounding. So the second part, which is actually monetary, where you're actually trading, your money to save time, is going to be editing. Now, there's a variety of ways to do this. So my students, I recommend if they're wanting to really build up a great channel and they want to do it longevity, which is important. We're going to get to the timetable in a second. I recommend getting a full-time editor, or at least part-time, someone you're working with consistently, because you're going to get to know one another and they're going to start doing the editing the way you want it done. And what I mean by that is once they learn your styling, once they know how you like things to be transitioning and the music you like, etc., it's going to allow them to take it and run with it. At this point, I just send video to my editor and he sends me back a final piece and it looks great. But when we first started, there was that back and forth of, okay, I'd like to see this a little different and we've grown over time. You can go ahead and get someone full-time. Full-time would be about $250 a week. Now, that being said, they can do more than just your long form video. They can go ahead and do your short form. So they can do shorts and things like that. They can take your content, turn it into blogs. They can create a website for you, which is going to support your SEO. They can do SEO research. They can do literally anything that you could possibly need, which makes that time more valuable and it takes things off of your plate. Now, you can also get people that you can find on Fiverr or other such websites, Fiverr, if you guys are looking that up, fiverr.com, that they are freelancers, meaning one project at a time. Some of my students do use that. They get mixed results, of course, because it takes a little time to get to know the person and your stylings as well. But that is a great way that if you want to go ahead and keep your budget a little bit lower and get your foot in the door to get content out there, because it doesn't have to be perfect. And that's actually the cool thing about YouTube. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's about you and about the information you're presenting. So those kinds of editors, you could probably get between $55 and $75 or more per video. And they usually get you a thumbnail as well. So that's the monetary side. But without talking too much, you had also asked about the uptick in time, right? How long does this take? I literally almost gave up at about month 5, right? Month 5, I'm coming into my 3rd trimester of being pregnant. Any of the ladies out there have ever been pregnant, you know what that feels like. And I wasn't sure if it was really working the way I wanted it to. I'd gotten 1 or 2, calls the 2nd month, and I got like 4 calls the 3rd month, and I got like 6 calls the next month, but nothing had come to fruition yet. In fact, I didn't get my first closing until 6 months into YouTube. Here's the power though. If we look at this on like an actual chart, it looked like it was flatlined for about 6 months. And then I finally got to 100 subscribers, and all of a sudden it just skyrocketed. And that's also what happened with my closings and my commissions. It went right up. And what was happening was it needed that time, right? So if I had given up, this isn't instant. It's definitely not instant. If you were coming into it for a quick fix, this is not it. This is for longevity. And in fact, the coolest part about this is some of the leads that I got last year, they're now coming to fruition this year. And the ones that are here coming in now, many of them want to buy now. So I've got this double down effect where everything is compounding the longer time goes out. So with that, it's allowed me to scale my business, not grow my business. The difference here is grow means you hustle and you grind and you put more time and more effort. Instead, I'm scaling because I'm taking the same 1 hour, but now it's producing more for me in that hour that I'm spending creating it, which is exactly what you want for your business. You don't want to grow, you want to scale. So change your language on that, anybody who's listening to this.
I love that because I think it kind of ties into something else I want to talk that you've talked about is like leveraging, because this is like a great way in which you're leveraging your time, because social media is always exponential growth.
Yeah.
And the thing about YouTube that is so frustrating for people but so rewarding at the same time is like the algorithm is like always working in the background, and it's like really working hard to try and find your audience. And so yeah, for you it took 5 or 6 months to find the audience, but yeah, now you have a like a nice hefty subscriber base. Your videos get like tons of views, and it's really working for you, and I would have to imagine it's paying for itself.
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
At this point, for me, it's an investment of $13,000 a year, which any of you that are out there doing leads from any of the large companies, you know what your ad spend is. I've had colleagues of mine that have spent 30,000 on some of these websites that are producing ads, right? But for $13,000 a year, I'm going to produce probably close to 400 to, actually, no, I take that back. It'll probably be closer by the end of the year, about 600K from that. Currently this year, I'm already at, I believe I was checking my numbers the other day. I've already closed 17 million, which, to give you guys an idea, last year my total year was 24 million, and that was 100K in GCI higher than I'd ever done on my own. So it's scaling upward. And that investment, that's a no-brainer to me. Like at this point, that's an absolute no-brainer. But what I would challenge anyone listening is to think about is it's not 13,000 right now. When you make a hire, when you're leveraging, whether it be individuals or let's say technology, you have to look at a every 2 week basis, right? So every 2 weeks, it's this. It's not a full 13, not until you got to the end of the year. But that's where I have to focus my business is I'm looking at a week to week, a month to month, what's my spend, but what is my return? The biggest challenge with a lot of people is, and this is the challenge with YouTube, is you get to that 5.5, 6 month marker and you're like, well, it hasn't paid off yet. Give it time. This is one of those investments you want to give it a full year, but you have to be consistent, right? So if you're not following the formula, and yes, I called it the viral agent formula for a reason because it's each piece, right? If you bake a cake, as I'm not a baker, right? But if you bake a cake and you forget the sugar or you forget the baking soda or you forget one of the ingredients, it doesn't get the same result. And I've had students that are like, I don't know what's going wrong. Can you audit my channel? And I look at it, I'm like, well, you didn't do steps 1, 2, 3, and 4. You jumped to 5 and you didn't do it the way I recommended it. And that's why you're not getting the results. So there's never just a one thing with YouTube. There's not one thing that you can do to achieve that success. It's all of those ingredients, that full formula working together to your advantage. And like you just mentioned, the algorithm. The coolest thing about YouTube, their algorithm does not change very much. They leverage heavily, or should I say, they lean heavily on SEO, which is search engine optimization. So in lieu of like, Instagram and different TikTok and all those, they're constantly changing an algorithm. So you're constantly have to figure out, well, what's working now? That's the cool thing with YouTube. It rarely adjusts. It rarely changes because they really just lean into the SEO. And instead, they give you more opportunity on the back end to optimize that. So as long as you're consistently optimizing, you're fine. But even I can figure out how to do it. I promise anybody can, because it was something that absolutely terrified me when I first learned about SEO. I'm like, I don't know how to do this. It's so much easier than you think. And TubeBuddy is one of the apps, one of the plugins that I utilize and leverage in order to make sure that I'm pulling the right SEO keywords, and it makes it idiot proof.
Love it. Oh, thank you for that hot tip. So, we've mentioned your viral agent formula a couple times. Can we kind of get into the nitty gritty of what it is? Like, it's, how people can join it, like what they'll get out of it from following your formula.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for asking. So, the viral agent formula, it is a basically a DIY. You plug and play. I give you the exact playbook that you can go from start to finish and say you can. I always say this: rip off and repeat. I think I am flattered when people rip off and repeat, but I give you the exact steps that you need to do not only to set up your channel, but also to figure out what you need to film. Right. So that's one of the biggest questions I get. Well, I've got this channel. That's great, but I have no idea what topics to do. Should I talk about restaurants? Should I talk about this? I go through a very in detailed breakdown of how you can find your ideal avatar. And basically, what an avatar is your ideal client, right? What do they look like? How do they talk? What's their familial status? Don't worry, you're not going to talk about familial status on your channel. It's more for you to internalize. So when you're speaking to that person, you're picturing them. And guess what? They're going to feel that that's the person you're talking to, and they're going to call you. I don't mention who my avatar is on my channel, but when people call me, it's so funny that they very often fall into those boxes that I've been speaking to. So we're going to talk about your ideal avatar. We're going to talk about how you don't actually need a script. We're going to talk about how you can actually structure your videos to get them to convert. I did video, I didn't mention this earlier. I had a YouTube channel and it was a total flop. It was years and years ago prior to this one, and it was agent facing. I was just given tips and tricks, but I never got any conversions from it. Here's why. I didn't do the research. I didn't learn how to do it the right way. And I take you through the structure of how to create the video step by step. What do you need to say in the introduction? What do you need to say in the next part? How do you need to structure the body of your videos? And what it does is it gives your ideal client the content that they need and the information, but then leads them to an actual action. Just like when you're in a listing appointment, you got to tell them to sign on the dotted line, right? It's the same thing in the video. So I take you through that entire process. I go through in depth SEO and how you can actually optimize every piece of your channel, which is really cool. And that's how I believe I've become so successful, is because of the optimization that I've been putting in there. But I also go through thumbnails, how to do A/B testing, basically every single step you could possibly do to mimic my success, I teach you. And it's all literally, I do screen share. I'm going to show you all the behind the scenes, where to click, how to set it up, everything. Most of my students, when they come out, they're like, oh my gosh. I actually had a student just last week. She texted me. She had no pipeline at all whatsoever. And now she's getting consistent people reaching out. And she sent me a screenshot the other day. She goes, oh my gosh, it's happening. And it was literally, hey, we're moving to the area. We saw you on YouTube. And that to me is one of the best things in the world, when one of my students can take exactly what I taught them, apply it, and be consistent. And we even talk about when to post and the right times. But if I can harp on anything, consistency is key. So following that framework and following the formula, the length of the video, all of that. But if you show up and then don't show up and then start showing up again, yeah, that's going to kick you a little bit. It'll kick you in the pants. You want to make sure you're showing up consistently over and over. I told you 6 months. And then I finally got over 100 subscribers. Well, by the end of that year, I had 1,000 subscribers, right? So 6 months, 100, 12 months, 1,000. And then it's consistently grown from there. But it's all because I keep showing up week after week with at least just one video a week. So it goes very in depth, and you'll have everything you need to know. And there's, plenty of room to work with me after that. But I always want to make sure everybody has the right stepping stones, so you're setting up your foundation to build upon it for the future.
I love it. There were so many interesting things in there. I'm really interested that you don't use a script and you coach people not to use a script. That kind of surprises me. Do people kind of balk at that when they hear it at first?
People get very unsettled when I first say that because they're like, well, what do I say? That's the best piece of it. So I don't know if you've ever seen anybody read on a teleprompter or try to memorize a script. They lose all of them, right? Suddenly they're like, and then it went to the thing, right? You can tell, especially if someone's not used to it. Like the 5 o'clock news, you can't tell they're on a script, most of the time. We are normal people, and it's okay for us to mess up. So here's what I tell everybody: this is not the 5 o'clock news. You're not live. People are not going to be judging you on a live video. This is a recording, and you're going to have an editor who's going to splice it up. So the way I actually recommend reporting is you've got your structure, and there's one thing that's going to be scripted, just one, and it's your call to action. That is the one thing that you're going to say over and over and over and over, and it's going to stick with your ideal client. In fact, my clients, when they call me for the first time, they're like, well, you said 9 days or 90 days, and I'm right in that window. So is it a good time to talk? And I start to chuckle because I'm like, oh, yeah, I do say that on every single video. But everything around that, I teach everyone how to work from bullet points because people are looking for three things in your video. They want to know the fact, so the bit of information that they came for. They want to know how that's going to affect them, and they want to know your opinion on it. We have to keep in mind that people could go anywhere to find this information. We're not reinventing the wheel. We're not digging up some undercover story in our town that no one knew before. I'm working off of Google, Wikipedia, census data, right? That's where I'm getting my information. We're just meeting people in the place where they are desiring to consume said information. They could read a blog, they could go to the same websites I'm going to. It's not hard to find it. Instead, they want to watch a video. They want to audio, they want to listen to my voice when I'm saying it. And it's my personality that they stick around for. Because again, they could go anywhere for this, right? And I've had clients who, one of them recently, who's so funny. He said, you've got to know that you've got competition on YouTube. I said, oh, absolutely. There's 30 other channels with the exact same name, even. I said, so why'd you pick me? He said, well, what it really came down with is we felt like we really connected with you. I had my opinion on there. I had my personality, which I couldn't do if it was scripted. He said, you also gave us a ton of information. He said, and you also gave us your opinion on it, your view on what that was going to look like. So if I could pick out any fact, let's say prosperity. I don't know, it's my area, right? So prosperity has the best schools. It doesn't, by the way. Prosperity has the absolute best schools in Charlotte with this XYZ rating. And here's the cool thing about that. And then I go ahead and describe what that's going to do for their students, their children, how that's going to affect their home values, etc. And then I give them my opinion. I live in this area. I can tell you that the homes are well taken care of. I'm kind of ad-libbing here because I wasn't prepared to go ahead and do that, but you get the idea. I can take one simple fact of the top school is in this area, which would take me 30 seconds to tell you, and I can expand upon it for up to 5 minutes. And that's what people are looking for. They want the fact, how it's going to affect them, and my opinion on that. Because when people are coming onto YouTube, they want an insider's view. They say to me all the time, I don't live there. I don't know, but we trust you because you obviously know a lot about it. That's what it takes. But when you get onto YouTube, you're edifying yourself, meaning you're one step ahead of where they are, which causes them to further trust you. You're not on national TV. Instead, you're on YouTube, but people are watching you on their television in their living room. So by doing that, by being even on that platform, it's elevating you. So going back to scripting though, if you know exactly the bullet points that you have to mention, you can take a look at the bullet point, take a look at the fact that you have to do, regurgitate it for 30 seconds, if that, but then you go ahead and ad lib and elaborate. And the elaboration is where people really come together and start to trust you and want to give you a call.
So then do you recommend people kind of start with something like maybe in their area, like their hometown, something that they're really like connected to first, so there's kind of more flow rather than this learning aspect of it?
Absolutely. Start with what you know. So even on my channel, I went broad strokes, right? I went with which I still recommend this for your channel, pick the closest, largest city, right? So if you're in College Park in Georgia, you're going to talk about Atlanta because it's also where people are going to be searching. If they're coming from across the country, they may not know College Park, they'll know Atlanta. And that's where they start their search. Even if they don't actually want to live in that city, they know that's a landmark that they can lean into and start searching from there. So I always recommend do one of your first, 2 or 3 videos on the main city to get that attraction and then focus in on what I would consider your niche. How great would it be if you could just sell houses within a 5-mile radius of yours? Pretty awesome. So hone in on what you know so that you could truly add and elaborate to that. Now, for some agents that might be listening that are maybe been in the business a long time, you know a lot about a lot of areas, but you might be questioning yourself if you are quote unquote an expert. So, and I used air quotes for anybody listening to this as an audio. An expert just means you're one step ahead of the person behind you. Keep that in mind. So, an expert doesn't mean that you've sold 1,000 houses in this one town. That's not what it is. It's just that you did a little bit of extra research and you're bringing information that someone needs to know that didn't previously have it. So I always tell my students, don't overthink it. Just talk from the heart. And you can always have your cheat sheet right there where you're pulling your data and your information from. All you need to do is pause, look at it, read it to yourself, go back to your camera and state it. Your editor is going to splice everything up from there and make you look like a superstar. This is why I love editors.
Yeah, they're the best. Shout out to my editor, Ryan. Why do you think some agents have a hard time picking up on whether it be social media or YouTube?
So I think there's a few reasons for that. I've had challenges with it as well. For me, on certain platforms, it's the consistency, right? Life, quote unquote, gets in the way. I had a busy day, and sometimes I won't even show up on my stories for 12 hours because it was a back to back day. I don't think about it. So I feel like that. And then you skip a day and then you skip another day and you're like, well, what does it matter? I'll go another day. No one's looking at it anyway. And we start to have that thought process. And part of that comes from even when we do post, we're not getting the likes or the follows or the this and that. I would share with everybody there are so many people that watch in silence, right? They observe in silence. They don't engage, they don't comment, they don't like, they don't do any of those things, but they're still watching, right? So we're in this world now where our value is connected to how many subscribers or how many likes we're getting. And we need to understand that every time we put ourselves out there, whether people like it or don't like it, they're still seeing us. And that's what we need to understand. But whether it be Instagram or Facebook or TikTok or YouTube, they all also have their own I guess you could say, formulas that you would need to follow to be successful. So I'll give you an example because we're all on YouTube right now, right? So I have a student that's getting ready to start with me here soon in one of my other programs. And she said, can you audit my channel? Like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I've been on YouTube for years. And I said, yeah, sure. Let's take a look. Now, she has about 900 videos on her channel. You would expect she'd have a lot of subscribers, right? She has
Mm-hmm.
131 subscribers, and most of her videos have an average of 5 views. So I got
Mm-hmm.
on and I took a look, and here's what I uncovered. While we can put content out, the type of content and how it is presented is extremely important. I think this is something that even myself, I missed out on when I first started years ago when I did a channel for like half a year and then said, okay, this isn't working, right? So it was agent facing. I didn't have a call to action. I didn't have the right thumbnails. I was doing things basically in clip art. I wasn't editing anything. I was just putting it out there, right? So if I had done it the right way, even myself, with a proper hook in a thumbnail with clear imagery, a SEO optimized title, SEO optimized channel, SEO optimized title, descriptions, chapters, making sure that I've got the right keywords in there, making sure that I've got like all of these pieces set up, I would have been successful with it. But it was the things that I didn't know that were killing me. And instead, I was going, I'm putting it out there. And so many of my students do the same thing. Well, I put it out there. Why is no one finding me? There are millions of videos on YouTube, even just on the topic that we're posting on. I've done the research on it and it's bananas. So for this particular student, and I audited her channel, what I found was most of her videos were home tours, which is great, except it wasn't a true home tour. It wasn't her introducing this house and telling them why it was important. Instead, it was a photo collage of the photos taken by the professional photographer, no thumbnail. The title was just an address. Think about this. Your title is what people are searching for, and that's why it pops up. So it was not optimized at all whatsoever. And that was 99% of her videos. The other videos were short 4-minute videos that were definitely her, but it wasn't catering to our ideal client, right? It was more of a, hey, look at this really pretty shop in downtown such and such. Hey, I'm meeting today with the zoo locally. That's great, but that's better for like a 5 o'clock news fluff piece, right? It's not as impactful and it's not going to cause a buyer or client from across the country to say, you're my agent. You've helped me so much with information on an area I didn't previously know. So, what we're doing now is we're abandoning her site. I know some of you are like, I put so much time into my channel. What do you mean leave it behind? Sometimes it's actually better and easier to start from scratch and get the algorithm in your favor, should I say, get the SEO in your favor versus sitting there battling what you'd already created over the last 2 years, right? So we're working on getting her started over again, but doing it the right way. So to answer in a summary with regards to your question, why are so many people having challenges with it? I really feel like most people either aren't consistent or they are consistent, but they're not saying and doing the right things to have a proper call to action. And they're not setting it up in such a way that anyone is finding them. Just because you do it doesn't mean they'll come. What is that movie? Field of Dreams. If you build it, they
Mhm.
will come. That is not actually true. If you build it in the right place with the right SEO, with the right thumbnails, allowing it to be searchable, and you do it consistently for enough time, not only will they come, it's going to compound and build the most incredible business you could ever imagine over the next several years. So that's the biggest challenge I feel like most people have.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I think it's kind of sometimes there's a bit of a stereotype about agents and social media, that they're, a lot of like just listed, just sold, or but there is a beautiful community of people like yourself who are really up leveling the online content, and it's really exciting to see that community growing and the kind of outreach you're doing. I thought of something earlier that I meant to ask about your videos. So a lot of yours are living in Charlotte, North Carolina. That's your YouTube. If I'm an agent and I'm thinking like, well, maybe my ideal client, or I'm not really worried about like getting a lot of relocation business, like what would you say to that? Is a lot of the people finding you through your videos looking to relocate, or is it also local people who are finding you just wanting to move down the road?
Great question. So most of the people finding me are relocation, partially because that's my avatar, but the other part is it's done that way for a reason. And I'll elaborate on that. Those that are moving into the area, the great thing about that is they usually have a hard set timeline. They know exactly what they want to spend. They have an absolute reason to be here, meaning interest rates really don't bother them. And a lot of them are actually cash buyers. In fact, my market is about an average of 450,000. We've got million plus buyers that are purchasing in cash and they want it in 2 weeks. So we've got these individuals who already have a desire to be in a specific area. And most times they've already narrowed down what they want in the house and where, which is great. Now, the second best part to that is instead of a local buyer, which I love my local buyers, anybody who's listening to this, but the best thing, instead of a local buyer, local buyers can go out and look at houses at any time, right? So they want to go on a Saturday, then they want to go on a Monday, then maybe a Friday. With those that are coming in from out of town, if they choose to come out and actually see houses physically, guess what? They're getting a flight or they're driving in, they're getting a hotel, which means it's usually a 1 or 2 days of boom, 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 and we're making an offer. So I can better structure and understand this is when they're coming, this is when we're seeing houses, and this is when offers are being placed. So for me, it better organizes it, and I can then future plan on what's going to happen. The other piece to this is many of them are buying off of video. So I'll do a full wide frame video tour for a lot of these people, and they buy it based on that, which also gives flexibility in time because I can go out at any time and we don't have to stand in the house forever. I can do the video and head out. Now, this also allows me to leverage too. My director of operations will go do video for me and show houses for me as well. So I can leverage that piece of it. So I'm not always out and about. Now, the second piece to this is they usually want a lot of information up front. So the nice thing about that, instead of me meeting with them and having to tell them all this information, they've already binged watched my videos and seen everything they need to see before they call me. Now, not a knock on any local people. I do have actually local buyers and local sellers that are also finding me on YouTube and seeing me as an expert in the area. For example, I had one that sold just outside of downtown Charlotte. They found me on YouTube. In fact, I was doing a video of their area, and in the background, just so happened to be down the street from their house. And they were watching my video going, "Yeah, we saw our house on your video. We were really excited. We called you." And they were moving to another area that had also done a video on. So for them, they saw me as an expert in these areas, and that's why they gave me a call. And that's happened more than once. Cool thing about that, people moving into the area, especially if they've got family, guess what? Usually the family wants to relocate too. So if mom and dad are going, if they're going, mom and dad are close to follow. And I've had many clients where I've got a follow up closing or follow up client just after they move because the family wants to get closer. So that happens quite often. If you're already local, doesn't happen as often. So there's a lot of advantages to that. But it's also for me in gathering additional listings, because I still list homes, of course, that aren't coming from YouTube. It's also a leverage piece. So I can let the sellers know, look, I have this YouTube channel. It gets X thousands of views per week, and your house is going to be on it. I can't say what any other agent does, but I'm pretty sure they don't have another YouTube channel because I've checked out most of the agents in our area. And this is another advantage to you listing your house with me. So I use it also as a tool and a strategy to help sell my properties, as well as showing sellers what I do to make sure their properties will sell. So it's got so many advantages, but relocation is actually way, I'm going to say, way larger of an opportunity than many think. Because in addition to that, they don't know anybody else but you versus local, where they probably have at least a stone's throw they'll hit an agent.
Oh, right. That's so good. That's so key. So we've talked about like leverage a lot. We've talked about leveraging your time with YouTube and you being present whenever people want to view. We've talked about kind of leveraging your time, with your team and then doing kind of video tours of homes. Are there any other ways that you have adopted to leverage your time so that you're not working nights and weekends? And is that still true for you, or do you find that you kind of grind still a little?
So it's such a good question. So now that I'm also coaching and training on YouTube, of course, I've got two jobs again. So occasionally I do end up working in evenings, but it's not ever with clients unless we're literally negotiating an offer, which I think everybody can agree. That's a really good reason to be working after hours. But no, when it comes to my actual real estate clients, I'm still not working nights and weekends. And for me, could I? Absolutely. In a heartbeat, I could do that and I could expand even faster. However, my one thing, the thing that I made my number one importance was I've got a 16-month-old and I'd like to actually be a present mom. So for me, when 5:30, 6 o'clock hits, the computer is closed. I am off. If I really need to send out an email, I'll do it at 9 o'clock, like after everybody's in bed and I've had dinner and I've had my evening. But it's very, very rare. I think there's been two instances in the last year that I have gone out on a Saturday to meet with someone, and it was because I got to choose to. It wasn't because I had to. 95% of my showings are done by a showing assistant, and I have my director of operations. I have my admin that also helps with scheduling. So I've done as much as I can to leverage my time and scale up. And I've realized if any of you are wondering this, like, well, where do I have the time to do this? Go look at your schedule and start asking yourself what activities are actually income producing. For me, if something is not income producing and can be done by someone else, even if it's going to be funny to try and figure out how to make it happen, if it can be done by someone else, you can go ahead and get someone else to do it. For me, anything income producing that can't be done by anybody else is me actually being on video. That's something that I cannot replace. But once I make that video, I'm cloning myself and I don't have to show up again for another week, right? So all of my 15 hours of lead gen I used to do a week or more has now been compressed into an hour. And it's all because of YouTube.
That's great. You've mentioned on some of your other talks that I've listened to, automating as well. Do you have any like favorite automations you'd like to share?
Yes. Yes. So my key automation, which this was so funny because last week this just so happened to happen. My key and favorite automation of all time is Calendly. Now you could have a Calendly and that's awesome, but if you don't use it, you're not going to reap the benefit. So, when I am actually speaking to people through my videos, I tell them go ahead and schedule a Zoom meeting, right? So, what that's going to do is it takes them to my Calendly link. They schedule, and I literally wake up in the morning with people on my calendar. I've never texted them, I've never talked to them, I've never done anything. And it's always a message because by the way, here's a key piece here, make it mandatory for them to tell you what their phone number is and give you an explanation of why you're meeting. So I just put it in something else that would help me with our meeting, or some information that perhaps you'd want to share about your meeting. And I do this for two reasons. Sometimes there are people online that are editors that like book a call with you and they're like, I want to be your editor. And I can just kind of delete it. But
Hmm.
also it's because I want to get that information from them prior to meeting so I know how to come across. Are they a family? Is it someone relocating for military? So I can already have in my mind how I can assist them. So Calendly is essential. And if you want to wake up to actual meetings with potential clients on your calendar. The second automation that I absolutely love, and I utilize it in my coaching space, but I think it's also very helpful if you're putting information out to any other social media, like especially Instagram, is Many Chat. Many people already know what this is, but Many Chat, I'm sure you've seen it on Instagram, on Reels. Comment, ready to go ahead and register for that, and the other. You basically create a keyword that when someone comments that word, it automatically sends them a message, a DM. And from there, this person can then follow the instructions you've laid out, whether it's downloading a guide or finding out what your home is worth or scheduling a call. It can lead them to that outcome, but it also then tells you who's engaging. So now you're already in their DMs and now you can comment with them and start converting them. The third thing that I would highly recommend, really utilize Google or whatever your email platform is, but utilize it to its utmost. I feel like it took way too long for me to do this, but I have templates for everything, like literally everything now. So I have so many of these emails that are coming in where it's, hey, we're moving. We saw you on YouTube, yada, yada, yada. Now I have a quick template that I can respond to them like that, whether it be a text template, which you guys can have text templates, email templates, anything. And now I have quick responses that as it comes in, either myself, or my assistant can just send a response and then it sends them to my Calendly so they can book a call. So everything should lead you back, no matter what system you're setting up, it should be funneling, not sending people in a bunch of random directions, funneling them back to the main reason, which is get on a call, set an appointment, meet with me. And once you're in that appointment, which I teach this in the viral agent formula as well, once you've got that call, where do you take them? Right? What do you do with them? And I take people through that process of this is what the first conversation looks like. By the end of the call, you should have a signed buyer agency agreement, which by the way, most of them do. You should have next steps set up, getting them with a lender. So all of these have been templated at this point. It saves me so much time. And a lot of people don't, and I didn't for the longest time. I'm like, oh, it takes me like 3 minutes. Okay, go ahead and calculate 3 minutes by 365 days. And I know I don't work every day, but still, do that math. That is a lot of time versus click, click, send, right? Just think that through. It's so worth setting up a template, and Google makes it really, really easy.
Awesome. Oh, that's so good. And Kaila, what mindset shift do you think people need to kind of take to get out of maybe like this the scarcity mindset, the grind mindset, and like really adopt these automations, like adopt leveraging time to kind of make time work better for them?
That's a really good question. I would say the biggest thing is a time block. And I know that sounds really old school. Yeah, time blocking, everybody's time blocking. Sure. But time blocking has really helped me. So, like, if I look at my calendar, there have been plenty of weeks that I've said, oh, and this is I struggle. I'll put this way, I still struggle with this. Okay. Like, actually making the time to do that one simple thing. There's two pieces that have helped me with this. One, understanding what I'm doing. Once you take the unknown out of it, of what do I say, what do I do, how do I make it happen, and follow just a simple structure, then it's plug and play and it makes it easier. The second piece is time blocking. So I even have to tell this to myself before I go ahead and cover up that time block of recording. I have to say to myself, if this was $1 million listing appointment, if there's a $5 million listing appointment, would I cancel it? Would I sit in the room with that seller and say, give me a minute, I'm going to go ahead and, hop over here to make this quick phone call, or I'm going to go have this other appointment, or I'm going to go grab coffee, but I'll be back later, maybe. We would never do that, ever. No one would ever do that. If you would, oh my gosh, you've got cojones, because I would never do that. But that's how I have to view this, and that's how I recommend anybody view this, which is treat it like a multi-million-dollar listing appointment that, in fact, if you show up for, you will get it. You just have to show up and be present, because the videos that I'm making, that's what they're doing. They're creating this opportunity for me to be getting $1, $2, $3 million buyers and sellers. In addition to that, it's going to keep selling for me, right? The same video, if I spent that 1 hour in that one day to make that video, it could be bringing in 100 quality leads to my business that I didn't have to spend any additional time on, any money, anything. I just had to show up for that one time. And when you really put that into perspective, showing up for that 1 hour doesn't seem as challenging anymore. And in fact, everything else around it can wait, because that is your highest producing activity in your business. And it's going to build your brand. You can use that content for other means, right? So that 1 hour, you now have shorts, you have reels, you have a blog post that can be made. You can put this on Facebook. You can use it on your website. You can do so many things with that 1 hour you spent. And by leveraging those editors or editor, you can go ahead and have all of that done, and you still only spent that 1 hour. So when you're putting it into perspective, don't be scared of it. Don't think that it's going to take so long. Understand it, own it, and show up. Even if you don't think it's perfect, show up.
Perfect. Kaila, you have been such a wealth of knowledge. How would you like to direct people how they can work with you, how they can be a part of the Viral Agent formula or work with you in coaching?
Yeah, absolutely. So as of right now, the Viral Agent formula doors are open. So if you guys, I did put it on there. I was looking at my name tag over here. For any of you listening in, at Kaila Lindsey Realtor, Kaila. Lindsey Realtor, if you want to find me on Instagram, and that'll lead you right to my Stan store. In there, I always have different courses that I am running and working on to better help the real estate community. And I specify and really coach in hard on YouTube and the follow-up game that goes with that to funnel people directly to you. And we were actually talking about this just before we hopped on. I actually have a code for you guys. So if you are wanting to move forward, you're still not sure, feel free. There's a clarity call link on there. I'd be happy to connect with you. But if you want to know everything there is to know about YouTube and how to be successful on YouTube as a real estate agent, go ahead and check me out at Kaila Lindsey Realtor and use the code The Closing Table at checkout. You guys are going to get 20% off, special just for these listeners. So hopefully you guys take advantage of that. But I'm an open book. If you guys DM me or reach out, I am here to help. That's my goal.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kaila.
You are so welcome. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for listening to the Closing Table podcast, brought to you by Windowstill. I'm your host, Kat Schooler. Make sure you're following us on Apple and Spotify, or if you're part of our YouTube audience, make sure you've gone ahead and hit that subscribe button. If you are enjoying this podcast, please consider leaving us a review or a comment. It helps us find more amazing listeners like you. Thank you all so much, and we will see you next time.